But, history and logic will demonstrate that if you're going to have permaculture, first, you've got to figure out a way to have permanent agriculture. So let's take a few minutes and explore agriculture, industrial agriculture as it exists today. Again, we're going to look at principle number one. We're basically going to do observe and connect. There's not a lot of judgment involved here. We're just looking at what is, what's so, what are the conditions we find ourselves in, and what are the results of our actions. So this is sort of the scientific approach to analyzing it. The first thing I thought was interesting, I was talking to a friend of mine who works at the University of Illinois in the Extension Service in agriculture, sustainable ag. And I said, Dan, if I wanted to farm full-time, because a lot of farmers I know have a job off the farm because you need a lot of acreage to be able to farm. But I said, if I wanted to farm full-time and not have a job off the farm, just, strictly, run the tractor and raise my crops, how many acres do I need? And he says, well, basically you need a square mile. It's 640 acres. And a square mile, pretty much you can be sure, over a period of 5 to 10 years, you'll average, that $50,000, $60,000 a year worth of income for working full time. Well, for what it's worth, in this picture here, actually the corner of this intersection, all the roads out here in Illinois are on a mile grid. So those corners behind me, this is our dog Macy in the middle of the picture there. But if you follow the road all the way as far as the eye can see to the horizon, there's a little stick to the right of the road. That's a telephone pole. That's 1 mile. You would need to own the land to the right all the way from where you're standing all the way to that pole, and then a mile to the east and a mile south and a mile back west again. It's a massive amount of land. What's interesting is we have a good friend who is doing organic vegetable raising in central Illinois. He's got 10 acres of land, and he makes more money than the person with 640 acres next door to him. On 10 acres, he owns his house now. He owns his land. He owns all of his equipment. He's incredibly profitable on 10 acres of land. What's also interesting about Illinois, we have some of the richest farmland, not just in the United States, but richest farmland in the world in Illinois. There are people in other parts of the world, farmers that go to sleep at night and they dream about Illinois farmland. I mean, that's how perfect or wonderful this farmland is. But in the state of Illinois, we import 93% of all the food that we eat. Richest farmland in the world, and we only grow 7% of Illinois' food. That should tell us something there. The next slide shows a picture of a field and talks about humus content. When these prairies, soils were opened up 150, 200 years ago, the humus content was 10 to 13%. That's pretty typical of native soils, even wooded soils. 10 to 13 is pretty typical. You need, humus is it's the organic matter. It's the leaves that have fallen on the ground and the dead logs and the sticks. All the material that was once growing vegetation falls to the ground and it starts to rot down. And it's the humus that provides food for bacteria in the soil. It is also the humus that is the sponge of the soil. It is what holds water or moisture to provide water to the plants. Well, you have to have 3% humus content just for biological activity to exist. You drop below 3%, there's not enough food for the most of the biology in the soil. Well, the humus content today of commercially farmed soils across the United States falls just below 1%. In Illinois, it's a little higher than that. It's like 1.3 to 1.5%. But across the U.S., it's under 1%. And that's because of the way we farm. Annual agriculture requires that you turn the soil every year, over and over again. You turn the soil, and every time you break open the soil to create a seed bed for your annual seeds, you end up dumping oxygen into the soil. It's just like when you have a wood-burning stove and you open the door and oxygen goes rushing in and the flames flame up. It's the same thing with the soil. Bacteria needs water, food, and oxygen to live. They're animals. They need all three to live. And when you dump a bunch of oxygen into the soil, the bacteria count multiplies. They reproduce incredibly rapidly, and they consume all the humus. So it's amazing, but it only takes about 8 to 10 years, and you'll drop your humus content from 10% down to about 2 to 3%. And then on top of that, industrial agriculture, because we use herbicides, pesticides, and particularly the ammonia, the nitrogen fertilizers, it kills all kinds of microbiology in the soil. And so you end up with a very inert substance. Basically, you end up with dirt.